Hey, good morning, my reading group. We're going to get started. I sent a video out previously, and I did tell you that I would be sending at least one more. So this is the second one I'm sending. I may possibly send out a third. I haven't decided yet about that, but I do know there will be at least this one. So here we go, kiddos. I did assign this. It's called the museum book. This book is you'll only be able to access it on the HMH site. So if you're not able to access the HMH site, that is okay. This is just some extra reading that I wanted you to do. And I thought that the book would probably be fun for you. So that's why I assigned it. Here is one of the first steps I want you to do for your work this week, like we had done in the past few weeks. I want you to start off before you read by watching that video that I sent yesterday. And then you would also do the history of communication. You notice and note 3 big questions. And I do believe I talked to you about this yesterday too. Informational texts give facts and examples about a topic. Authors of informational texts may present their ideas in sequential or chronological order. Informational texts include visuals such as charts, diagrams, graphs, timelines, and maps. Social studies texts also include words that are specific to the topic. These are words that name things or ideas. Okay, so let's set a purpose. Think about the title and the genre of this text. What do you know about the history of communication? What are some things you'd like to learn? Write your ideas below. Like yesterday, we did go through some of the different types of communication. So and did talk about that we needed to do this previous to reading the story. We also went through a slide that talked about doing some background about communication. So that's something that we did spend some time on already. After you finish reading the story, I want you to do the collaborative discussion section. I do realize, yes, you're not going to be able to talk to the people in your group, but I want you to go through and I want you to answer these questions. I want you to use complete sentences and use your best grammar and punctuation. All right, kiddos? So I want you to go through and answer these. You'll either be answering them online on the HMH site, or you will be writing them down on paper or in your textbook and then submitting them to me through Seesaw or through Remind or email, whichever works best for you and your family. To follow up with that, there are some, I did assign this also, words about protecting our planet, big idea words. The words in the chart will help you talk and write about the selections in this module. Which words about protecting our planet have you seen before? Which words are new to you? So I want you to go through this and read it, and you will need to answer these, all right? And think, well, not answer, but think about these and how they relate, right? Ecology, recycle, conservation, and sanctuary. Those are the words. All right, kiddos. So these are some of the things that you should be thinking about. The text structure, right? As you're reading, you're going to think about the text structure. What things, for comparison contrast, are different? What are the things that are different? And then what are the things that are alike? So the purpose is to describe how things are alike and how they are different. You'll see transition words like but, both, however, and the word and. For cause and effect, the purpose is to explain what happened and why it happened. So you'll see transition words, because, so, in order to, as a result. Okay, so your cause, why it happened, and the effect, what happened, right, kiddos? Sequence, first, next, last. Purpose is to explain events in order. Transition words you will hear are the words before, first, next, then, last, after. You probably hear some other words too. You might hear the word second, third, fourth, just words that describe things in a chronological order or a sequence. You might see it talked about as chronological. It means the same thing as things in a sequential order or sequence. Problem solution. Well, what is the problem and how are we going to solve it, right, kiddos? So, to show a problem and how it is solved, transition words will be problem, solution, difficulty, The answer is there may be others too, but those will be some of the ones that you see most commonly. Okay, kiddos? There is a video that I did assign to you that I want you to watch after you have read the story. And it is assigned in your reading. I know some of my students do not have access to that, so I am going to play the video now. So hopefully they get access to this.
Let's look at this page from the History of Communication.
The Internet.
Computers first came into practical use in the mid-1900s. However,
for many years, there was no way to link computers together to allow the sharing of information among them. Over the second half of the 1900s, the emergence of the Internet became one of the most important breakthroughs in the history of communication. In the 1960s, the United States government's Department of Defense developed a network, interconnected system, of military and government computers. The network was intended to protect the information on those computers in case of a war or disaster. Soon, universities, corporations, and other organizations developed their own computer networks. Eventually, these networks joined with the government network to form the Internet. The word Internet means an interconnected network of networks.
Great reading. So, what do you think this section is about?
It's about computers.
Like the history of computers.
Good. What do you think is the main idea of the first paragraph?
I think it's that the start of the Internet was a really important breakthrough. Because it says, the emergence of the Internet became one of the most important breakthroughs in the history of communication.
That's it. Now, let's think about how the author organizes this information. We've talked before about 3 different types of text structure. Do you remember what they are? I'll give you a clue for the first one. Problem.
Problem solution.
Good. That's one of them.
What about writing about events in the order that they happened?
Yes, great. That type of text structure is called chronology. And the third one?
I don't remember.
Me either.
Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. The third one is cause and effect. When the author writes about something that happened and why it happened, or what caused it. Okay, now let's think about the text structure of the first paragraph. Which of those 3 do you think the author is using?
Well, you know what we said the main idea is?
About the start of the Internet?
Yeah, well, I think that sounds like a solution to something, because it says it was a breakthrough.
Okay, great. So, what do you think the problem was?
I think it has to be that there wasn't a good way for all those people using computers to share information. It says right here, for many years there was no way to link computers together to allow the sharing of information among them.
Good job. So, we're looking at a problem-solution text structure in the first paragraph. Now, let's look at the second paragraph. What kind of text structure are we looking at here? What clues do you see?
It looks like maybe details about the start of the Internet.
Do you notice anything about the order of these details?
Well, first it says what happened in the 1960s.
And then what happened soon after that.
And then what happened eventually.
And what did happen eventually?
The Internet was formed.
Right. So, the second paragraph tells us about steps or events that led to the Internet being formed.
Yeah, and those steps are in order. So this one is more like chronology.
Exactly. The author organized those events, which were part of the solution to a problem, in the order they happened.
Cool.
Now, can you tell me what the author's purpose was for writing this text? Remember how we talked about problem and solution? Use those words if you can.
So the purpose is to tell readers about the problem of computers not being linked to share information.
And that the Internet was the solution to this problem.
Excellent.
Okay, kiddos. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about are Latin roots. Remember, I've said that a lot of times it might be called a base word or the root word or the root of the word. So Latin roots telly or port and graph. The root is the basic word part, usually from Greek or Latin, that carries meaning. A suffix is a word part added to the end of a base word that changes the meaning of the word. The roots telly, port, and graph are Latin. If you know what a root word means, there's a good chance you'll be able to figure out the meaning of the word. Telly means at a distance, port means carry, graph has to do with writing. So, television, telephone, telegraph. Those are all things that can happen and are supported through a distance, right? Television it's broadcasted through towers and satellites and different things. Telephones are now the same through lines and satellite, depending on your cell phones and different things too. And telegraph is an older form of communication back from the 1800s, right, kiddos? And it went through a line and it had a series of dots and dashes that people had to read in order to figure out what they meant for the words. Port means to carry, so export means something that is carried somewhere else, right? Like an export is something that is exported overseas. An import is something that we bring in from somewhere. Portable means you're able to carry it somewhere, right? If it's portable. Biography, well, we know what a biography means, right, kiddos? Biography is a story that is written about someone by someone else. Graphic. Well, graphic is something that is a picture or a writing, right? It's a graphic picture. Geography. Well, we've all been learning that geography is where things are located, like on a map, or how things look, like the geography of a state. How some of it might have plains and other parts of it might have different rivers or mountains or hills and buttes and those type of things, right, kiddos? All right, so I also wanted to talk about how we gather information if we're like doing a report or when we are writing. A primary source is an original document, interview, or information from someone who witnessed an event. A secondary source is a book, article, or report based on research someone else did. Although secondary sources can be useful and reliable, they cannot reflect what people who lived at that time thought or felt about that event. So, remember when we read the Galveston story and how the people who spoke, we read the letter and we were able to understand what it really felt like to be there at the time? And we talked about how that's a primary source because the person was really there and lived it. And then there was an article that was written about that by someone else who hadn't been there. Although the information may have been accurate, they were not able to tell us or show us how it would have actually felt to be there, right? Because they didn't have that firsthand information. So we're going to discuss whether each of these is a primary or a secondary source. All right. So a diary, well, diaries are usually written by a person, right? So that would be a primary source. If you're writing a diary, you're writing about yourself. An essay can be either, couldn't it, kiddos? Because you could be writing an essay about yourself, or you can be writing an essay about someone else. A newspaper report, unless the person is writing it themselves, the article themselves, it would be a secondary, right? Because they would be writing about something. The newspaper generally writes about something that happened. They may interview the person and then get quotes from the person, but it is still going to be considered a secondary source unless the person directly wrote the article themselves. An expert is still going to be a secondary source unless they lived through the situation. They may have a lot of knowledge in that area, but they are still not the person or the thing or it had the same experience as whoever the primary source was. And a textbook is also going to be secondary unless it has anything in there that is an autobiography or something that came from a primary source. Then part of it may have some primary information, but in general it would be secondary. Okay, I just wanted to go through that a little bit with you to kind of understand what primary and secondary sources are. All right. So kiddos, I'm going to leave that for you here. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will talk with you later.